topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Hello and welcome to the new episode of Mindfulness in Action. My name is Dalida Turkovic. I'm calling in from Serbia, and today I have a dear guest who is going to join me in a minute. Mila de Koning. She's calling in from the Netherlands, and I got to know Mila while I was on my way back to Europe, and I contacted Chris Germer, who was also one of the guests in the episode about the compassion under pressure. And I told him, look, I'm back in Europe and I'm thinking of coming into organizing something here and maybe spreading mindful self-compassion in Serbia and in the region. And he said, you have to talk to Mila. So you're going to hear why in a moment, but let me introduce a little bit about the professional context, what Mila does. She's the founder of the Self-Compassion Academy in the Netherlands, and she's also the trainer, supervisor. She's been coaching also as well, different audiences since 2006. Really gave her contribution in the field of healthcare. And something that I would really like to explore with Mila today is her work in the regions that are going through the war. So how is it to really bring these concepts of self-compassion when working in the middle of the crisis, in the middle of the difficulties that are collective? So she co-authored the book Heart for the Doctor, Working with the Self-Compassion in 2020. So Mila, I welcome you to today's episode.
Thank you.
It's lovely to connect with you again. Last time when we talked, we thought 1 hour is not enough. And I'm sure 50 minutes is not going to be enough when we begin to talk about everything you have done and what needs to be done as well. But as we begin and slowly go into the heart of the matter of what we would like to explore, I asked this question all those who join Mindfulness in Action. How did you start? If there is a beginning point, what led you to this path? Yeah.
To mindful self-compassion, or just mindful self-compassion in action in the countries where there is conflict?
Tell me about mindful self-compassion first, because I assume that working in areas where there's conflict came a little bit later.
Came much later. Yes. Yeah. Well, I turned to self-compassion basically because I was working in healthcare and I was teaching already mindfulness there. I was working a lot with people with anxiety and depression. And in that sense, I got in contact with mindfulness because a book came out and said, well, mindfulness is just as effective for people with recurrent depressions as antidepressants. So this is how I got in contact with mindfulness. And when I started teaching that, because I was working in healthcare and I'm a teacher at the same time, so I was doing both. So I started teaching mindfulness to different public. I started teaching it to my colleagues. I started teaching it to people in the mental health care, and I started it also teaching to groups with normal daily life problems, like the normal daily life problems.
No.
Yes. And basically, it was very amazing because what I did realize is that those three groups were almost the same. They were sharing the same things, they were having the same problems. And at the end of the group, most of them said something very important. They said, "Ah, I learned to become more kind to myself in this course." And that's when I realized a lot of people were very unkind to themselves. And, secretly, I thought I was already compassionate with myself. But I wanted to learn more about this criticism that people had. So I started buying books from Christopher Germer, from Kristen Neff, from other people, put them on my nightstand. I had two small children, didn't have time to read. I fell asleep as soon as I started reading. But then the course came to the Netherlands, so I followed it. And in that course, I started realizing that I was way more critical to myself than I actually knew. Basically, my inner critic was like a little devil on my shoulder, whispering his advice in my ear, what was not really critical, but it was really undermining. And I just didn't notice it because it felt real. It felt like me, like it was the truth with all my mindfulness practice. I didn't recognize that inner critical voice. So I can say that going through this course really was transformative for me. Not after I did it in an intensive format. It was not that after 4 or 5 days I left and I changed my life. But slowly, slowly, I started realizing how that undermining voice was actually putting me down. And I was, you know, blocking myself from being the real me. So I started diving into the self-compassion practices. Then I thought, I want to become a mindful self-compassion teacher. This is what I did. And then I decided that the world needs compassion. So I became also mindful self-compassion teacher trainer. So this is what I do now too. I teach still the course, but I also train the teachers. So I thought more people need to spread this the power of self-compassion, basically. Yeah, because it's a very transformative practice. Yes.
Yeah, so you described something very similar to my journey as also a teacher of mindful self-compassion, and coming to that inner critic, the critical voice. And I'm fascinated how with the practice, I feel like my inner critic trains also its way to stay. Right.
Yes.
And there was, when I, similar to you, when I went to the program, I was also, oh my God. First, somebody told me I was very critical towards myself. I didn't even know. I thought that was normal. How else? Right. Yeah. But then after some time of the practice, as I go and deliver programs or go deeper in my practice, I realize my inner critic stopped talking. And now it's a he. He has a very physical way of expressing discontent. It kind of like turns the head away from me somehow. That's the visual. Rolls the eyes. It goes like, it's kind of like, here is this one. Like, oh, not again, or like, who do you think you are? That's how I interpret it later, right?
Yes.
But can you share with me? You said that there were all these different groups that you taught, regardless of what kind of challenges and difficulties they were working with. They all come to a similar way of realizing how much impact the inner critic has. Did you find any similarities within groups at all, maybe, or culturally, or in the profession, in healthcare versus other groups, that sometimes these inner critic narratives could have some similarities or a thread that kind of like repeats itself?
Yeah, I think that the the way the inner critic expresses itself can be very different, and it can also be different in different cultures. The reasons why the inner critic is active, that can vary through cultures, through your upbringing, um, how you're socialized, what your experience were when you were young, at school, when you were studying, your peer groups where you were dealing with. So all that can vary, but the way it expresses is like the effect of it. It can also express, of course, in different ways, like an image, what you are sharing, or that in a sense of disapproval. I had a friend when I was younger, and she could not say I don't agree with you, but she could just do something with her nose and her face, and I felt disapproval. It's like, and people can feel that inner too, like feeling that sense of disapproval, or it's like some shivering that you feel in your body. So that can also be very, others really hear a critical voice. And but the effect that it has on us, I think that's basically for everyone the same. It's either putting us making us feel smaller, having that sense of like, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable. Basically, underneath all the ways that the inner critic expresses itself is always the same need, is that for us human beings, we want to belong, we want to be loved, we want to be recognized, acknowledged. And basically, I think that effect that makes you go small and really, you know, go silent. For instance, me, I was not stepping up for myself. And if I did so, I was doing it with too much energy. So I never learned to connect to myself, really like what's going on for me, and wow, why do I need to step up for myself now? So, and I come from a place from compassion. I know now how to do that, but when I was younger I didn't. And I think this is basically what I see in all these groups, is that's why people connect when they're together in a compassionate space, because they recognize each other, like, you're a human being too, just like me, and we're actually the same. When I have taught, yeah, many international groups, and what I see there is that the connection across cultures, across countries, across languages is really very powerful, because we connect from human to human. And then, all these other differences, they're not important anymore, because it's where you actually can see each other for who we are, basically both human. And that's really, I think, also, this is also the power of the self-compassion, is that when you are in a group, one of the components, as Kristen Neff said, is like the common humanity. And this is really what you can feel is in groups where we're teaching self-compassion. It's the common humanity, that we have so much more in common than that we have our differences. It's just a matter of perspective. Yeah.
Mila, has it ever happened to you that you were teaching mindful self-compassion and somebody said, I don't have an inner critic, and yet they wanted to attend the program?
Yeah. Yeah, because they don't recognize their inner critic really. They are there for a reason. They see, I mean, when they go and look up what mindful self-compassion is, they will find that it's about treating yourself in a kind way. And they don't recognize, they don't even have a strong inner critic, not in that sense of an inner critical voice, a very harsh voice or something. But do feel that the way they relate to themselves might be not so very helpful. For instance, people in healthcare who can, or people who care for other people, basically, they can really find joy in caring for other people. And then and one day they feel deflated or defeated by it, and then they don't understand how. And when they feel like they, oh, I'm getting a burnout, they actually become a little bit disappointed in themselves, and they don't recognize like, oh, they feel there's something not correct in how I'm dealing with myself. I need to give myself compassion, although they don't feel that they don't give themselves compassion. And they come to the course and slowly start recognizing like, where is my energy leak? Where is it that I'm draining myself? What is it that I'm doing to myself, that drains my energy? Well, I am actually loving my work. Like me, I was working in healthcare. I loved my work. I felt that it really matters. And that was one of my core values. I wanted to do something that matters to the world. So, but in healthcare, I started feel being drained by the suffering of others. And I didn't have the capacity how to hold that. So what I learned was to have a professional distance or a professional detachment almost from the from between me and patients. But I found it very complicated because it was also detaching me from a part of myself, which was mainly the reason why I went into healthcare. So, and I've never, during my time in healthcare, I quit when I got children, then I couldn't carry all those burdens anymore. So I started teaching. And when I've never ever, when I was in healthcare, learned how to deal with that. It was in the Mindful Self-Compassion course, how I learned to balance my compassion, and that I should not only give compassion to others, but that I should also be compassionate to me, because I'm suffering a little bit with them and through them. And that means that they are my feelings, and I need to take care of my feelings too, not only for the other person. So basically, by learning that now, I think sometimes if I had learned that earlier, I might have not quit. Not that I mean, I don't regret that I left, because I love teaching, really. I love really teaching. So, so it's good, but it's something that has my heart, that I think all healthcare workers, for instance, should know how to deal with this, and especially how to deal with themselves, because they are suffering with the people they take care of. Yeah. And we are human beings. We can't say no. This is just happening automatically. This is how we are wired. We are hardwired for connection. Yeah. Although, if you look at the world, sometimes you wonder, but it's true. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. We have so many examples of very maybe aggressive way of relating to humans more and more, which is burnout in itself.
Yes.
Before we go there, because this is just naturally opening up the theme of where we are going. Maybe just relating to those who provide care for others, we could say naturally empathic people who are really there to support. I recently helped a friend find someone from the region to go and support her while her husband was going through a lot of health problems, and she alone couldn't really support him as well as she wanted. And the person that came was so good at taking care of him. I mean, she was strong. She knew exactly what to do. She could even set the boundaries really well. She knew what she wanted, but from what I heard from the friend, she was smoking. She was constantly on her phone. WhatsApp, Instagram. So this is how she was spending her free time, in a way really not nourishing and giving that sense of stronger boundaries in terms of where her health comes in. And it was really, it's really interesting. I think that depending again on cultures in different countries, we can see how this sense, even when we remove the person from the work, the way they're living their personal life is just not as if they're really connected with deep suffering. They know how to connect and what to do when there's a crisis, but in managing normal life, as we can say, right, like they somehow don't know how to approach it. Would you say that mindful self-compassion can support with that as well?
Yes, I think mindful self-compassion is supportive in all areas actually in your life. I always say to people in the courses when they come and bring up problems, like for instance this or bad habits that they have, or other sadnesses that they are carrying. I said, well, always when you ask yourself, there's a problem, what's the solution? I said, well, before you're going to think about the solution, there's one thing that the problem needs, and that is compassion. As soon as things are difficult, is what we need is compassion. And sometimes we need a tender compassion. It's like caring for someone else or caring for yourself. It's like with kindness and care, the way you would care for someone who's really dear to you, or a small child that is in pain, that you hold and that you soothe. And sometimes we need fierce compassion. Fierce compassion means like that you can stand up, set boundaries towards other people, but also can set boundaries to yourself. Like when you have like these bad habits or things that that you're doing that are not good for you. I don't know, me, for instance, I have a tendency to go to bed too late, and I need to be like, I need to be fierce with myself, to tell myself, listen, you go to bed now because it's important that you have a good night's sleep. And so, and that's the fierce compassion. It's like standing up for yourself, towards yourself. It's like being the mom, who is telling the kid, no, you can't do that. Not to be nasty, but because it's not good for you. So the fierce compassion is something that when people start learning about self-compassion, sometimes they have to find the balance between being complacent or being critical. Yeah. So it's like, and what we want them to learn is this: can you be in the middle? Not being complacent just because you say no to yourself, to someone else, set a boundary, not with a critical voice, but from compassion. Not like you're not good enough, so you have to change, but I love you, and that's why I don't want you to suffer. Yeah. So I want the best for you. It's so coming from that place. The same with setting boundaries to others and saying no. You do that. If you do that from that inner critic, most of the time you come from a place of aggression and you go very hard in, and you're losing the message because, for instance, you start being angry. And when you come from a place of compassion, it doesn't mean that you can't be fierce and raising your voice, because sometimes you need to. But it means that you know that you're doing that not because to hurt the other person, not because you want to inflict on the other person what the person did to you, but because you need to stand up for yourself or for someone else, to say no, because this is not right. So this is a fine line, where you go from um, compassion towards either complacency or being too aggressive. So this is, and people in the course sometimes have to learn that also when it comes to saying no to themselves and to their own bad habits. Yeah. So
yeah, absolutely. So you're mentioning aggression, and a little earlier we already said as the world is now having these proofs of violence and almost, yeah, not to even describe it. It's very hard to comprehend, but we are coming to that place where I can only say that it seems to me that it's your fierce compassion that is getting you to go to these places where people are in the middle of being violated collectively, in all ways, and losing dignity because of the war. Um, I don't even have a question. I mean, I'm just kind of like, could you share a bit about your experience on how it is to go to those regions? Because you train online, but you also go there, right?
well, I haven't been going there because at this moment, for instance, the places where I actually teach is too dangerous. But I do go to Ukraine. Some of the places I teach is too dangerous, but for a project in the fall, if everything goes right, so I do go there and I teach online. And basically, what I can say about that is, first of all, it's I started realizing, that one thing that people need when they're under so much aggression, living in countries at war, is that you need to have some sense of normality and some sense of moving through it all, and also some resource that you can rely on. So, and mindfulness and self-compassion can be really, really helpful there. So we started training people um, with mindfulness and self-compassion. And basically, my experience there is that I saw that, for me, for instance, what I really noticed is that I found that equanimity to carry the suffering and staying open without going under. And that is really, and being holding the frustration, the anger, the sadness, the grief, the sometimes the astonishment, just not being capable of comprehending what's happening. How is this possible? Like that. Um, Being capable of holding that all. Um, is really very powerful if you teach in this context. And basically, by holding that space in that way, people can do that themselves too. So it's beautiful to see how deep the connection can be when you connect on that level, like where I remember that one day when I was teaching to a group that just went to an horrific attack. And we, in the end, we said, like, like a meta phrase is like, may we all have the courage to have an open heart. Well, even when we are deep down in the shit, you know, uh, because, having an open heart helps us to remain human. And basically, it's so easy to lose your humanity being when you're dealing with so much um, aggression and injustice. The injustice is so big that it's difficult not to stay open. But as soon as your heart starts closing, then you're losing that part of yourself. And that is a very, very nasty feeling. So I found it, I have to say, for me, I always feel privileged because I am not living in such a country. And I think the people with the real courage are the people in those countries who dare to show up in these courses that we give and in these teacher trainings, because they found the courage to do something like this in the context that they are living in, and I deeply admire them, because they are the ones finding the courage to get up every day and help their fellow um, their fellow people to find a way through all of this. So this is, I think that is where the biggest courage is, that they show up and they continue to show up and they start teaching even mindful self-compassion. So this is very powerful. In the two countries that are at war where I'm teaching, in both countries they are teaching mindful self-compassion, and they have groups full of it, and they adjust our program to the needs of what is going on right at that moment. And then mindful self-compassion can be such a valuable resource to continue and feel your humanity, basically. Yeah. So
Yeah, for just as a reference, I also had Marina and Christina. They were guests
yes,
also on Mindfulness in Action, and we talk about that, and it was so touching. I think it took me a couple of days afterwards to, in a sense, recover from that courage, from the strength
yes,
that I felt. It is so touching. It just goes so deep inside, and thinking of how one can remain human under inhumane conditions, really.
yes,
It's truly amazing.
yes,
And you're also mentioning that there are other countries. I know we talked, and let's, for the sake of keeping everyone safe, not mention where other region is, as we agreed. But just to give a bit of a context, even without the war, we could say that some teaching like this could be a challenge, just because of the cultural context. I mean, I'm back in Serbia, and it's religion has created a little bit of wider impact than what I remember before I left 30 years ago, when Yugoslavia was a communist country. And then I feel a little bit, oh my, how do I talk about concept of mindful self-compassion, because there's such a language that is related to religion. And I know you're teaching in places where not only that a religion is an obstacle, let's say,
yeah.
but additionally the war also. Do you I mean, what do you learn from that? What do you personally take as a teacher?
Yeah, basically, what we see is that because mindful self-compassion is so grounded in research, that is really helpful, and that is like, and it's like, in for clinicians, really a powerful tool for in dealing with people who have like mental health problems, to stay more stable. So I see that is really the foundation in those places where we teach. That is like, it is the clinical evidence that is there, that is helpful to spread the self-compassion. So it makes it, what you call it, legal. Yeah. So um, that's why it's also important, because it's not a meditation course. It's like, really, I say self-compassion is a practice of daily life. It's really taking care for yourself, like you would taking care for someone who's really dear to you. And of course, the cultural context always matters. but the clinical evidence is still there. So, and in healthcare across the world, that's being acknowledged. That's being acknowledged. This is what we see, because mindful self-compassion, I'm not good in numbers. Maybe Chris told you before, because he always knows. But mindful self-compassion is being taught in a big number of countries over the world. And and these are all different cultures, different religions, different ways of life. And it's still, because I think also, it's about compassion. It's not mindfulness. It's, mindfulness is more attached to religion. And we have the mindful self-compassion, but it's about self-compassion. It's about compassion. And compassion is a language that, most people know. They know. It's like there are very few people who can't connect to that part of caring in themselves. Even the biggest dictators on earth can sometimes connect to that part. So it's something that we all know. And uh, uh, yeah, some people have more connection to it. Other people are completely locked off it. Of it, we know people who don't have that capacity for connection, but there are not many. So I think because we're tapping into that, it makes self-compassion um, so part of daily life. Like that. It is easy for people to take on. And then the thing is, this is what makes it so special in the countries where we're teaching at this moment with the Self-Compassion Academy, is that um, there were a few people there who took it on to start, because it was not us, it was them and us helping them. So it's like, and, so they are the ones who have the energy and the courage to move through all the steps, because doing spreading compassion is like a very big process. If you are the one person in a country and then you found us, and then we're going to help you to make it bigger, it takes years. So but this one person, in those years that we are doing this, all these different steps, is, well, horrific things happens along the way. So, and then these people still continue. So I can see, for instance, in one of these countries, we have like 35 committed people who, whatever is happening in this moment, they still continue. And I am really, I feel so much gratitude to them that they are doing this, because we'll have to start somewhere. And that's what they're doing, like it's really the resilience that I can see that human beings can have to well, to try the world to make a better place, basically. Yeah.
Yes,
We should not give
absolutely.
up on that. Yeah.
Not at all. I mean, this is kind of like we're all trying in our own way, and it seems you really have a privilege to meet with right people who have the capacity, as you say, to hold that space beyond
Yes.
the program, because you go there, deliver, and then or online, and just doing that, I can imagine it really requires strong practice. But then these people who are staying and going through it, so they're the participant in the context, right, of the war, and then also teaching and holding space for others. I mean, it is just unbelievable, I
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
really admire their superpowers, really.
Yes. Yes. Basically.
Mm,
Yeah. Because we support them, but we can only do so much. We're
yeah,
not there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
And
even if we're there, we leave. Yeah. Yeah.
yes, exactly. And when we connected to talk about this episode, I mentioned my personal experience and that I ran away from Yugoslavia after 1 year. I mean, even if it was not right where I was living, it was already unbearable for me. I was in my 20s and I thought like, no, I can't go through this. But in any case, coming back and realizing how much trauma there is, I even went into one of the places after a couple of years after the war ended there, thinking, let me see what happens after the war. And I just saw the demolished houses and people in poverty. And I really thought, like, what is the point of it all? I mean, I felt so discouraged, and I didn't have any of these skills at that time. But now that I do, and I'm back in the region, and I can still feel the trauma. There are different people. People are going in different phases, but there are some who are still feeling that us and them, and kind of like going and thinking, nationalism or all these, again, dictatorship, autocratic leadership and all of that. And I remember asking you, so what do we do? Where do we focus mostly? And then you mentioned the magical word, the forgiveness. So could you share a little bit of that, the healing, as we have within mindful self-compassion? We have different layers and focus for healthcare, but then there's about shame, which Chris Germer is really passionate about, and he's doing that work. And what about forgiveness? It's so easy to get trapped with that being stuck with what happened, right?
Yes.
If you could share about that work.
Yes, and forgiveness is not the magic word. So that is also good to know. It's like, not if you forgive, then it's not there anymore and it makes things easier. But it makes you, the forgiveness, for instance, it's also good to keep in mind that forgiveness is not about saying that the other person, sometimes you see people saying that, like saying like, oh, but this person didn't know better, so like, but still makes it bad, so in this sense, we forgive other people not so much because of for the other person. We forgive other people for ourselves, because if we don't forgive the other people, we will carry the pain. Not only the pain, we will also carry the anger, we will carry the frustration, we carry the hurt, and we will close our heart again, because we can't carry that all, and we will have to close. So, and what we would like to do is, by if we start closing that, and maybe you have seen that also in the region, is that when people close so much because they can't forgive, it changes them. It's for them difficult to connect to love too, because if you close your heart, that's where the love is, metaphorically. It's all locked up. If you have to lock your heart to hold the anger and the pain and the grief in, then the love can't come out either. So basically, what we do when we forgive is that we will allow ourselves, to let go of the grief. And letting go of the grief means that sometimes I think it's more also about self-forgiveness, forgiving myself that whatever I have felt, is that was normal, it was human. Whatever happened in the context, of injustice, um, most of the times, like if we look what's happening now in the world, it's not personal. It's just, I don't know. I don't know even how to call it, but it's like ideas people have. It's like, like I'm more than you because of my whatever, my ethnicity. at this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, whatever the ideas are there, but it's not so personal. And that if we can let go then of that anger, and that is really something that we can connect to our own humanity again, and then by that also seeing the humanity of the other person. And that doesn't mean that you're going to say it's okay what you did. It's just saying that that was, horrific, but I don't want to carry the crutch the rest of my life. And in that sense, forgiveness is healing. Um, and that doesn't mean the pain will be gone. So this is another thing. It's just that you can allow yourself to hold the pain. I always say, like, you have to find the softest place in your heart to hold the pain, so that you can carry it there from that place of love, that you let the pain rest in love. And if you can do that for yourself, then it's easier also to do it for another person. So I can still be angry about what happened, but I don't have the all that anger anymore. I don't need to direct it uh, to that other person anymore, because I can hold it and leave it, basically. Because
Yeah, well,
otherwise it will kill me inside. Yeah.
as if we are calling people to actually change the relationship to anger that they have, because it's often we actually like feel the anger and kind of like explode and go. It is about the mindset and almost like bringing a different value in.
Yes, it's
Don't you
like
think?
holding the anger in love. Yeah, so sometimes the anger is, the anger is very valid, but uh, and sometimes the anger can also become the hot coal that you're holding in your hand that you want to throw to the other, but you hold it yourself, and then it's eating you. So, but basically, when it's sometimes impossible when so many bad things are happening, and especially if we look at the world now, what can happen? It might be impossible to forgive and let go of the anger. In that sense, to let go of the anger, that might be impossible. But what you could do is hold that anger in the softest place of your heart in love, and let it rest there, so that you don't have to carry it all the time with you to act out to all those other people who've done this. So, which means that you still feel that, like, no, um, but it is not eating you from the inside. And I don't know how to explain it, but it's like it's both there. It's like we say, like, where the equanimity is like where everything comes and goes, and this is with this too. It's both there. It's like the world is beautiful and horrific at the same time, and we have to deal with that. Yeah.
Absolutely, and I'm understanding, and also right now I see we have just a couple of minutes left. This is this is that moment when we are just scratching the surface, and I know you're going to be teaching a program very soon, right? Like I don't know when people will be listening to this, but the easiest way to connect with you, because I'm sure whenever they listen, there will be another program and another program. So what is the easiest way to connect with you, Mila?
Well, they can always, go through our website, because there's my email, and the website is the selfcompassionacademy.com. Yeah, so, and that's where you can find me. Even if you type my name into Google, you will find me too. It's not such a name that many people have.
Yes, that's true.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Mila. I actually, I'm also through the Center of Mindful Self-Compassion. I'm going to be teaching a 10-week program soon for a wider audience, or maybe a little bit more catered to Americans. So yeah, and it's wonderful to feel that there is a sense of belonging and that conviction about the shared practice and how important it is. I'm mentioning all of this also to share with people, to say doing it alone is not easy. It's actually the gift of being with a group is to bring that common humanity, and then all these concepts become a little bit more palatable and felt sense, and there is some guidance from someone who knows what they're doing.
Yes.
So with that, Mila, I thank you so much for everything you shared, and I'm looking forward to continue to connect in many different forms, especially when it comes to bringing mindfulness and self-compassion to the region. And for now, we are going to close this episode with good wishes for everyone who is suffering and dealing with these extreme difficulties in war zones, and also with the health crisis and everything else that is becoming or part of humanity. So let us hold everyone dearly in our hearts. And for now, this is all. Thank you, Mila. And my name is Dalida Turkovic. This is Mindfulness in Action, and see you next time.